Hi, Christine. How are you?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. What is your current position at the moment?
So I am currently working as a global marketing specialist for a company called Wolters Kluwer. They are a financial services company based out of London. And so, well, they're much more than that. They're a global company that covers many different businesses. But the particular business that I work for is their financial risk and reporting business, and I manage specifically their digital marketing processes from a global perspective um, on a day-to-day basis. So that's essentially the role that I'm in now, and we have quite a large team, I would say, for a firm like this, um, especially because the business unit itself that we work in is quite small. There's only about 200 people, and we have a marketing team of about 12 people. So it's a nice bit of resources right there. Um, and so my role kind of lands somewhere in like the junior mid-level role where I'm kind of I'm taking feedback from some of the people that I'm communicating with who are a bit you know at a different position I am, a little bit lower, and then kind of relaying that to the people who are above me, so the more senior management individuals, and just making sure that there's like full transparency on the marketing activities that we're engaging in from a global perspective. um, so that way both people internally, so like our teammates, they're aware of how marketing is bringing value to the business, and also from an external perspective, where obviously we're trying to target and reach specific prospects and customers, and by measuring the results of any given activity or like any given task that I'm kind of working on, we can see how much of an impact that we're having on our clients and prospects out there, um, in comparison to, how some of our competitors may be uh, facing them.
Amazing. So, what do you think differentiates a good marketer from a bad one?
Um, I think it's tough to say because I think my answer to this question changes from year to year. The longer I'm kind of in this role, in this position, I've been in marketing for over 5 years now, and I'd say like the biggest struggle I find is working with senior level staff who are very close minded and stuck on like the traditional way of doing things, and that can really hurt you, especially in a marketing from a marketing perspective, because marketing is a big element of marketing is advertising, and if you're still advertising in like the traditional old way of doing things,
Mm.
you're not going to remain competitive out there on the market with other businesses who are adopting new strategies and like getting more familiar with the types of technology and tools out there that can help them automate their processes and just ultimately take different angles on their and how they're you know addressing their market with their various promotions. So I think the in a nutshell, the what I'm trying to say is that basically the people who are very close-minded and traditional, like they stick to the processes from the past, that's probably not your strongest marketer out there. It's the people who are kind of looking for new ways to innovate and to develop and achieve higher levels each day. That's the kind of mindset you want to have in the marketing capacity.
Of course. So, may I ask you what would be the old traditional ways that some marketers are using? What would be the outdated ways?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say there's quite a few different things, different processes that are considered traditional. So, for example, like when a business is creating a new piece of content, for example, like and that's a marketing function, right? Like let's say you're creating like a new brochure or a new white paper or a new article. A traditional way of doing it would just be to have it, have it created, put it up on the website, maybe have it printed out, and then you have like a hard copy version that you can give to your salespeople so that they can pass that out at events. And these days with like the rise of everybody like going green and these issues that people have with like not not being so environmentally friendly, like a lot of big corporations and businesses get the finger wagged at them for doing things like this, like because you're wasting paper by printing all this marketing material. Newer way of doing it would be to digitalize things, right? So to have like a digital version of the article that's easily accessible for people to on their phones or tablets or whatever, just so it needs, when you do create a piece of content these days, you need to think of it like, especially now with everything that's happening with COVID, you need to think of the world as like a virtual world, right? People are like, even if they could, they probably wouldn't go and pick up like a piece of paper in an article to read it, right? Like they're so like, because of all the germs and stuff out there, they're not going to want to touch it. You need to be able to think of your business as constantly evolving and transforming, and that means all your processes have to transform and evolve as well. And the more and more unfortunately COVID spreads and things like that, the more we need to kind of think towards a more digital view of things. So that's why actually digital marketing is becoming an increasingly important function, for a lot of businesses these days, especially within the last year.
Yeah, of course. So, what skills do you think make a good marketer? So, what skill do you need to have skills to be a good
Mhm.
marketer?
So I think one of my strong suits, because I don't have a marketing background like in education. My background, my degree was in English literature and psychology, and I'd be lying if I said that I didn't use those degrees for my in my role, because I absolutely do. You need to have good communication skills. You need to be able to write. You obviously need to be able to read. um, and and as well as the psychology element is like, you need to be able to understand people, and what do people, you need to kind of put yourselves in your target audience's shoes. So the people that you're trying to reach out to, what do you think they want to hear when, or what do you think they want to read when they're looking on their on their LinkedIn or their email? What do you think is going to capture their attention? So I've definitely used my degree, but I wouldn't say, that you need to have, so I wouldn't say you need to have a degree in business or marketing, but you do need to have a passion for understanding business and understanding their products. So if you want to do marketing and you want to get into, you know, you probably want to think about getting into a field that interests you, right? Something that you're going to want to dig deep and really get like a solid understanding of what are the core values of this business and how do you drive those values in every bit of communication that you're doing. So there's definitely like a passion for business, good communication skills, and creativity too. You just need to be able to think outside the box, because there's so many other businesses out there that are competing against you, and you need to be constantly on your toes and thinking like, okay, so they're addressing the market this way, that's our competitor. How do we either leverage that, or how do we capitalize on that and do something better, so that way people shift their focus from our competitors onto us, and then we become, and you also need to have that go-getter attitude, right? Like you need to be, when you're in that marketing position, like you're thinking, whatever I do, like whatever activity or function that I'm providing here, it's to promote my business, and so you are essentially an advocate for the business, and you're kind of the point of contact internally as well, that is able to communicate a business in a way that is effective from a sales perspective, because sales and marketing kind of go hand in hand
Yeah,
as well.
and it's amazing how people think that marketing is just sales, which
Yeah, no, I mean yeah, it's certainly it doesn't get as much what's the word, marketers don't get as much glory as salesmen.
No, they don't.
And it, yeah, and they don't get nearly as much credit as they should, but they, like more and more now, like companies are adopting a view of, you know, now marketing teams also have a monthly and yearly target to hit. So that used to be a sales thing only. So businesses are recognizing the fact that there are a lot of marketing influence leads coming into their funnel. And as a result, like, you know, a lot of marketers have stood up and said, we should really be getting credit for some of this
Yeah,
because we're contributing to the revenue, right?
yeah. So, what has been the most exciting marketing project that you've worked on?
I'd say so there was two. So when I was working at my previous company called GMX Group, they were a startup financial technology firm that focused on building electronic trading platforms for all sorts of, like, so they were asset class agnostic, so you could trade any sort of asset on these trading platforms. They were just configured in a certain way based on your business's needs. And that business in and of itself had many like subsidiaries created out of it, because there was a lot of like target markets that we were exploring from an electronic trading perspective that ended up, you know, revealing all these other business opportunities. And the CEO of GMX was very much like, he loved, like he loved, you know, projects and starting new businesses. So one of the ones that we did was in Africa, called FinCom Eco, and that stood for Financial Commodities Ecosystem. And it was essentially like revolutionizing the way that agricultural products were bought and sold in Africa. And as we were building that business, you know, we needed to develop a brand, we needed to develop like a whole, it was, we had to develop a whole new look and feel for this whole company. And being a part of that was really exciting because you kind of got to like create a business from scratch, right? And from a marketing perspective, that can be a really fun thing, right? Especially if you have creative freedom to kind of put your own spin on it and your own point of view. And especially, you know, if you really understand what the business is trying to achieve, it's a lot more, it's probably the most like hands-on type of project you can do in a marketing setting. um and then in my current role, you know, I've gotten a bit more specified in the digital marketing realm. And part of my function within the last year has been to revolutionize the whole way that, you know, this very traditional, very like, you know, reliable business has presented itself on social media. And because they've invested, so now that they've spent a certain amount of money within the last couple of years in to invest in their digital marketing function. And so they've brought me in to kind of like strip down all their social media accounts and rebuild them from scratch and kind of get them into a really competitive like standpoint against some of our bigger name competitors, like, you know, Bearing Point or Moody's Analytics, for example. um so I mean, while I have moved to a company that is definitely like, it's more corporate and they've been around for quite a while, so they're a much more established firm than what, you know, my previous role was. They have given me quite a bit of freedom to kind of take control and own this area as my own. And that's something, you know, when you're a part of a team, it's quite hard to find that because everybody kind of shares a piece of the pie. And you know, everybody gets credit at the end of the day, but this one thing is mine. And it's really exciting to be able to own something like that and to succeed in it as well. You know, you set your goals at the beginning of the year and you hit them by the end, and it's just, you don't even realize that a year has passed you at that point. You know.
100%. So you're a digital marketer. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So what would you say are the common mistakes that digital marketers make?
Hmm. Well, I don't make any mistakes, so
Oh.
no. I think I think you know, I think the most common mistake that I've made in the past year is assuming that I know more than I actually do. because there's always more to learn, right? And the thing with digital marketing is it's kind of an unexplored territory. It's an evolving territory. So there's new bits of information, there's new tools and practices coming out all the time, and like all the marketers in the industry that are having to deal with this and kind of work as a digital marketing function in their businesses, you know, they're kind of figuring it out as they go along too. So nobody can really say that they're an expert in this area at this stage, because it's still very new. I mean, obviously, like, social media and stuff like that has been around for a long time, but it's trying to find alternative channels on digital platforms, in an effort to kind of keep yourself, you know, up to date and up to speed with what all the other businesses in the world are doing, even if they're not necessarily in your industry, right? So like sometimes when I'm doing like a competitor analysis, from a social point of view, I'll be looking at, our competitors. I think I mentioned a couple of them before, like Bearing Point and Moody's Analytics. I'll be looking and seeing what they're kind of doing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm limited to just those businesses as a as a comparison, right? Because then, there's other companies out there like, Apple or Amazon that obviously have a fantastic business model, and we need to think about how can we leverage that into a business like Walter Kluwer, that is the financial services focused kind of business. They obviously have practices in place at Amazon and Apple that work very well from a business perspective, but we are trying to see how we can kind of translate that into the financial services world as well. So we can always learn. I think the biggest mistake that we have is that that we try to learn specifically from people within our industry too, and that doesn't necessarily yield like the best results. You need to be looking at a bigger picture. Look at some of the top players in other industries too, and see what it is that they're doing that you're not, and if there's a way that you can leverage what you're currently doing to kind of meet that level, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, definitely. So, what are good marketing communication strategies to really connect with your customers? What would you say are the good, digital marketing communication strategies to connect with your audience?
So obviously the core ones are email, right? Then you have social media, and then other, just like on your website as well. That's a communication method, and any other sort of digital advertising you do. So that could be like, for example, sometimes we run banners on other publication websites that people that we're trying to target also read. So for example, like risk.net is a very big one that we're constantly partnering with them, and they're giving us advertising space on their website. So that's another way, like third-party advertising. And again, like I said, always looking for new channels to kind of get the message out there as well. Something that we tried in the last couple of months, actually, that has proven to be very effective is paid social. So like sponsored LinkedIn campaigns. This is something that, obviously LinkedIn has been around for a while, and their sponsored like campaign platform is also something that's been around for a few years now, but not too many people knew how to use it effectively up until like the last couple of years, I'd say. There's a way more training material out there now than there was when I first started looking into it. And there's been quite a bit of shift in our own strategies as well, to incorporating that into something more permanent. But yeah, so paid social is something that we've been using a lot of, and specifically like these in-mail conversation ad formats that they offer. So that's essentially where you have you have a series of messages kind of pre-loaded into a campaign. And you send, so when you launch the campaign, you're targeting specific individuals. And let's say I'm targeting like all the chief risk officers in Vietnam, for example. You have the ability to select that specific audience group in LinkedIn Sponsored Campaign Manager. And then you can, when you launch the campaign, what will happen is they'll target those individuals, they'll send an initial message to them and into their inboxes. And then there's a call to action at the end of the message where they either say, there's questions like, would you be interested in finding out more? They click yes, then there's another message that gets sent automatically until they eventually either submit their details, so like their contact information, at which point they are then allowed to read whatever article or ebook or whatever digital form, like whatever digital piece of content that you're promoting to them. And then you have a hot lead. That's considered a hot lead. And then that goes directly into your Salesforce account, and then sales takes it from there. So it's really quite a really useful tool. And it's something that, my team has been specifically using quite a bit in the past few months.
So what would you say are the new digital marketing trends for 2021?
So I think paid social is going to be a big one. So I think, yeah, definitely. So I know, like, from my perspective, we're doing a bunch of planning right now. And from a social media perspective, we're definitely going to be investing more from a paid social media perspective, because it's yielded quite good results. We've kind of spent the last year working out the kinks, like identifying where our real target audience was and understanding the type of messaging that was going to work best for them. And now we feel like we've kind of got a good grip on it, so we can truly, maximize that investment. Further to that, we're looking into other like digital advertising opportunities on different like publication websites and like risk.net, for example. So we've got quite a lot of that set aside for budget next year. And then obviously, since you can't really do events in person right now, we've been looking more and more at digital platforms for events, so to host webinars and things like that.
How do you continue to expand your marketing knowledge, your digital marketing knowledge? Yeah, what do you do to continue learning and expanding and growing?
So in a good like company structure, they'll typically set aside some budget for training every year. I know my company does it. I know a lot of other companies do it as well. I know a lot of companies that don't do it too. They tend to be smaller and more like startup focused, but typically training is a part of the yearly budget plan, and it's part of everybody's goals for the year that they have to complete a certain amount of training each year. So I've taken I took 2 digital marketing certification courses in the last year, which definitely, it definitely helped like kind of broaden my horizons a bit and kind of explore different channels that might be good for us from our business's point of view. Yeah, so the training courses definitely help, and just kind of trial and error too would be I mean most marketers kind of learn on the job, so it's really like you can take as many training courses as you want until you can actually put it into practice and see what the results are. You won't you won't really learn from it, right? I'm a very hands-on person, so I learn from doing and that, I mean, another way to like test how your own like how to improve your own business's messaging, for example, is by doing like A/B testing too. So testing different types of messages with your audience as well. We did a lot of that in the past year, and it's kind of helped inform our strategy for the year to come. It just takes a lot of time and energy out of figuring out what we want to say, right? Now that we kind of know what works and what doesn't.
Amazing. So our last question is, what advice would you give someone starting a career in marketing?
My advice would be to kind of go in with an open mind, right? Just don't expect that any sort of degree or experience that you've had before is going to really prepare you for what you're going to actually have to do in the real work environment. Obviously, like having an education in marketing is going to help you because you're going to have an understanding of what a marketing like team structure looks like and what the function is for. But yeah, just really being open to taking in the feedback from your colleagues and just growing from the people who've had a lot of experience in the field.
How can I, for example, have you ever had a mentor, someone to mentor you? How do, for example, someone like me, how can I find a mentor? Someone in a higher level in marketing who can guide me, help me, someone who I can learn from.
Yeah. Well, we've got one right here.
Yay!
And but I will say as well, like you have so obviously if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Very much.
But as soon as you start working, whoever your manager is, they will become your mentor. It just what kind of works that way, whether you like it or not, to be fair. but yeah, I mean that's kind of the role of any manager is to teach those below them to rise to their potential.
Christine, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with me. I really, really appreciate it. I know you're in New York for your new position, so I wish you the best of luck in everything. So thank you very, very much.
You're welcome, Laura. Thank you for your time. Sorry for some of the noise.
Okay, have a wonderful day, Christine.
You too. Speak it later. Bye-bye.
Bye.